Now, the key one, and I say the key one because in the KPI one, well, actually, no, all of them, but this one in particular, there's quite a lot of reliance on what we think are heat maps, and we just want to do a quick kind of reconnaissance of this. So the key point here is heat maps in their truest form are not actually just coloured tables. So we also want to choose specialist dashboard visuals for higher data ink ratio. So we're going to have a look at some examples of that. And then avoiding the same pitfalls as charts and graphs generally. So up until now, we've been talking about dashboards specifically, but the chart and graph design principles generally obviously apply. They don't not apply just because it's a dashboard. So we're going to take a look at this heat map one first and cover this on. So for those that were part of it, the last session that we did on chart and graph design, we said we'd come back to this point. So we went through the typical uses of chart types for the different types of analysis. And so you can get the cue from here that heat maps are useful as a 2D area plot for time series. So they're good for high volume time series, which is too overwhelming to show by line. So that's really, you only really use them when you've got so much data that a line plot would just be confusing and you couldn't see one from the other. Oh, sorry, finger trouble. They're good at drawing out cyclical patterns, which I think is their key point and the key focus of the design. And then the really important point is the color should encode the values, not the text. So this is an example of one that I think is actually quite good. It's in the KPI dashboard. It's towards the back, where you've actually used a calendar and you've encoded each day. I haven't got the key on this one, but you've encoded each day with the average delay. So that's actually quite a good example of this, and that gives you an overall overview of a year, and you're able to immediately zone in on things, and it's a kind of understandable format in terms of a calendar. So that's really great. And the one on the right is one I created. It's made up data. It's vaguely related on December 2020, but it's really not. But really just to give an example of what we mean here, what the key part of a heat map should be. So you've normally got two axes. In this case, it's days of the month and times of day, but it could be any combination of the two, depending on what you want to look at. What this would draw attention to is cyclical patterns throughout a 24-hour period across 1 month. But you can pick, months to years, minutes to days if you want, whatever that is. But the point is you've got the two axes, and then you're encoding the value in a graded heat map within that. So here is an example of one of the pages in the report. And I don't know, does someone want to have a guess at the proportion? It's very hard because it's a 2D thing, but the proportion of the page that's devoted to the colored tables. I don't know the answer. I'm guessing here. Anyone want to give a guess?
34%.
Oh, that's very. Do you want a 0.5 on that as well, Anthony? No, I don't know. It's very precise. I think you've got one of those measurers and you're scanning it. Very good.
Eyeballing it.
Yeah, I'd say it was probably somewhere between about 30 and 40%. And so, can anyone tell me why they think this might be challenging? Go on, was that Graham there?
No.
Oh, you're sounding very shy now, Graham, all of a sudden.
Too much? I don't know. What? Tell us.
Okay, tell us. Okay, so for those of you that are at the last session, this next slide will be a reminder. Anyone remember this one? So we're going to whiz through it quickly because we don't have much time left on this session, but we've got the video of the other one, which I'll post as a shortcut. So this is a quick reminder that tables are really good for looking up precise values, and graphs are really good for seeing overall patterns and shapes. We've got system 1, the hero in the video, is the automatic thinking. And we've then got system 2, which requires thought, effort, focus. So with tables, we need to engage our text processing centers in order to understand that. Immediately we see a table or text, we're using system 2 effectively to try and understand it. And it's quite a slow process, hence the tortoise, but it's really good for exploratory analysis and study. On the right hand side though, we've got the graph's visual pattern, which taps into our visual processing centers. Very fast, that is a hare, not a rabbit, apparently. But we're much more into the explanatory analysis and storytelling on this side. And our focus with all the communication work we're doing is in this quadrant here. So the problem with colouring tables is that because it's a table with text in it, you've engaged system 2, which means that visually system 1 is kind of put on the shelf and system 2 is trying to work out what's going on. There's a bit of colour there, but it's drawn to what do the numbers mean? What can I make sense of this? So by removing the numbers, thank you, Marcus. Yeah, I know I need to, if anyone's got an icon for a hare, that would be really helpful. Perhaps I would squash him a bit and draw his
I'll
ears
stretch him.
Yeah, so by encoding, by colouring the table, you're kind of confusing the signals, basically. And if we stick to the tradition of a heat map, which is that you're encoding the values with colour rather than adding the text, then you can engage system 1 much more quickly. So that's the main reason for it. Another thing, I thought, oh, okay, I'll do an example. I'll graph this and show how we could do it as a line. And I did that, and I thought, I recognise that shape. So with that cue, can anyone tell me what is highlighted on the screen? What's the connection between them? Any clues? Anthony, can you give us a percentage of the slide deck again for this coverage area with your excellent assessment skills?
I think Anthony's just on another call.
Oh, is he? Okay.
On hold.
Yeah, he's had to go.
Oh, okay. So I'd guess maybe it's about 30%, 25, 30%. So actually, all of this space, all of this real estate is taken up showing the same data. So I think, because what resulted when I graphed this was that I was like, which I should perhaps have realised. So we've doubled up on this, plus we've got a little summary here as well with a bit of white text. So on several counts, I think we can increase, if we remember about this data ink ratio, we can increase that significantly. And we can increase system 2 by thinking of different ways to show some of this context. You've actually got it in a line graph here. So we need to think about that. I'm conscious of time and you guys need to go. We've packed a lot in. So that we then said, okay, so there are specialist dashboard visuals. There are some others, but the key obvious ones are these spark lines. So we've seen it on one of the dashboards before. It was quite a full dashboard, but it's a very small line graph. And depending on the data, they can be really useful to show overall trend without having to have a full kind of graph and axis. So depending on the data and depending on the choice, they can be a useful way to show trend, but in a very small space. And then this right hand one here is something called a bullet graph. We're going to have a very quick eyeball at what it really does, but in essence it's a way of encoding that target performance against kind of progress towards that target, with the background shading as well. And then we can also, we've seen some of these before, but we can also use kind of coloured dots to draw attention to things where things are slightly out of whack. And in case you hadn't noticed, note to dials. Similar reason for pies, in that they take up a lot of space, but it's a very low data ink ratio, and you're having to translate. There's so many different varieties and styles of it. You're having to translate so much when you can just, you can encode that really easily in a bar or a line. It takes up less space and it's much easier to see for system 1 to deal with. That you have the slide deck. I'm sorry, again, with all the excitement, we've run slightly over time, but this gives you the anatomy of a bullet graph. The spark lines are really easy to do in Excel. now. I'm pretty sure the bullets are as well. So there are options. I'm not saying you have to do them, but there will be more. And probably I should have put a little science lab experiment sign up there as well, because there may be more you're aware of for how to do this. But what we're looking at is to condense information into a smaller space as possible, but still give visual system on the visuals. And then we said, we've been talking about dashboards all the way through, but the principles of chart and graph design still apply. Really, the dashboard is really just deciding how we compile and bring stuff together in one place. So this is just a visual reminder that all of those things still apply. The principles of decluttering and clarifying, which you've already pointed out, also apply. And yeah, we're actually not far off now. So the little experiments back. So what I think would be great, if you've already done this, that would be great. But I think Dylan and Martina have set some context here. Hopefully we've given you a bit of a flying tour through some of this stuff. Really happy to help you, give you feedback, give you explore. If you need more sessions on this, that's also great. And we're very happy to do that. But I think what would be really great is for you to sketch out some design layouts and hierarchies and kind of color choice options. Perhaps, well, maybe have a look at the front cover, see what's possible there. See what we can do with this summary and landing page. And we had those time series line graphs earlier, but you know, they're not the only way. So maybe there's some clues in this that can help you think with your context and experience of the data in the audience as well. How could we do that? How could we take some of these principles and do that? And then there's the page per KPI or PI section, where we really, the big thing there is we really need to think about these heat maps that aren't heat maps. Are there actual heat map encodings that will be useful to show context, perhaps to draw out people's interest in, oh, okay, that seems to be a pattern. And you're probably better placed than I am to decide whether that's a daily cycle or a weekly cycle or a monthly cycle. I see. So yeah, I know some of you have to go. So final chat is select analysis type and graph type to emphasize progress against target, and have a think. Really interesting to explore more on this financial year and road period versus the rolling year and the other stuff. How can we really visually key that in? Comparison between regions maybe, or between other things, so to help with that context. And then these visual cues to help people explore and connect to the day-to-day work a little bit more.